if you're the CEO, right, and you're the one having to do sales, which most of the time it is, right? But then you're also worried about client meetings, and then you have to work on the deliverables, and then you're the technician in the business, and then you're doing employee meetings, and then you're doing processes and procedures. Like, how much time are you actually spending in that sales seat,
Right.
which needs to be a 40-hour-a-week job?
Right. If you call me and say, I'm this business owner, the CEO, and I do all the selling, I'm going to tell you I'm not for you. There's some things you need to work on first. You have to get that function of sales outside of yourself and delegated, not delegated, but you have to grow somebody into that, right? You're not ready to invest in marketing yet.
Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando Leduc, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Spaghetti on the Wall, we are back with another one. Marcia Barnes is in the house. Marcia, how are you?
I'm terrific, Armando. How are you today?
I am feeling really good.
Good.
I'm really happy you're here. When you get to meet some badasses, and Marcia here's a badass, it's just such it's a humbling experience, right? Because you're all like, you're going through life and you're like, man, I'm a really good marketer, right? And then you meet Marcia and you're all like, damn, I got a lot to learn, right? And that's it, and it's a good place to be, right? I love being in rooms where I'm the dumbest person in the room. I always strive to be that. So I'm always learning, and I'm so glad you're here because we are going to learn a lot from you. So Marcia, marketing guru, wrote a book called Here We Grow. And we can talk about a bunch of different things, but I want to kind of get a little bit of backstory on how you got started, and then we'll get all into the tips and tricks and growth and all that.
Sure. I came out of college having studied journalism, but I was a full-time librarian for Indiana University and kind of just thought I'm going to be a librarian. And I moved in order to get married, and the job that I got hired for at Xavier University, they weren't going to be ready for me for about 5 months. So in the meantime, I took a job selling marketing and advertising over the phone, and made 5 times more money than I was as a librarian, and kind of said, all in on sales and marketing, right? Just a fantastic way to grow a career. And along that journey, became an entrepreneur. Probably showed a lot of early leanings towards that as a child. I do think there are things that happen to you in childhood that you notice, oh, that's what became a career for me, right? For me, it was I snuck into my father's spare closet and stole his gifts that he had been getting from his work every year. He was an engineer at Seagram's. So I was reselling his booze that had stacked up in the closet.
Who are you selling it to?
The kids, well, one of my cousin actually came to me, and he was like the coolest kid in school, right? And he said, "Hey, doesn't your dad get a allotment of free whiskey and booze every year for Christmas?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, your dad doesn't drink. Where's that all go?" And I said, "Well, it's stacked up in his closet. There's probably 3 dozen cases of it up there." And he goes, "Well, if you'll bring me a bottle of Seagram 7 tomorrow, I'll give you $20 for it." And this is 1978, maybe, so that's a ton of money. And my cousin was the coolest kid in school, and I would do anything he asked me to do. So I brought him the booze the next day, gave me $20. And it was not very long until I was the coolest kid in school. And one day, my dad comes in from loading up the grain truck with his driver, Kenny. And it's the middle of the day. Dad never comes in the house in the middle of the day. And I go, "What are you doing, Dad?" He goes, "Oh, I'm going to get Kenny a bottle of booze for Christmas." And he goes up the steps, and I'm like, "Oh, crap." And the next thing I hear is, "Marcia!" And these boxes being flung across the bedroom.
Wow. How many bottles did you sell?
All of them. It was a
Was he
lot.
proud of you?
And I was walking around with a big pocket full of cash. I mean, we lived in the country. You couldn't really spend money. There wasn't an internet yet. So they confiscated all my cash and made me uh, go do chores for the same amount of money. So for like a year, I had to mow grass for 10 cents and shovel cattle manure for a quarter, and stuff like that. And
How much?
the thing was,
How old were you?
I was 15. So I
Wow,
was a teenage bootlegger. I
that's
have two
amazing.
sisters, but what did he say? Marcia!
So you were always the outlier,
That's
right?
me, yeah.
I get it. I get it. I was that same kid,
Yeah,
definitely entrepreneur. I would, I was a paper boy. That was my first job. I was a paper boy and
beginnings
I
are
would
great.
go and deliver these papers. And then what I would do is, what an idiot. I would take some of them and I would act like they didn't get delivered. And then I would go to the corner, and we lived on an army base. And so there was a lot of cars that would drive through, and I would sit and I would just sell the papers to cars that were coming through. It didn't last very long. They were all like, "We never got our paper." Be like, "I don't know. I delivered it." Um, what a, what a kid. What a kid. So anyway,
so,
so I,
the,
you know,
yeah, you and I are the same ilk, find a way to get it done. Um,
find a way to get it done.
yeah, along my journey, I met a guy that just an act of God that we two of us got introduced. And he was running a $2 million business out of the spare room of his home, and I had an agency not unlike Valve and Meter today. We helped people get new leads for their salespeople through outbound call center work, and he hired us to do that. And within 90 days, we put him on an $8 million run rate, so 4 times what he was trending when he started. And it was on, right? And so I worked with that guy. He was my client for 4 years. We merged the two companies together and grew that to over 400 million in revenue by 2013. And I exited. I owned a small part of the company, but a small part of $400 million is a ton of cash, right? And so I exited and went down a path to create Valve and Meter, because the momentum behind that business was its focus on the math of marketing, and we had repeated it in several different verticals. And I felt like, and Dave really felt excited about this too, that I could go help a lot of families create abundance and wealth, and not just one. So that's how we get here today.
And that's why you're a badass.
Yeah,
So thank you so much for being on the show.
sure.
Um, so let's get into the mindset, right? Of how do you take, like, because a lot of marketing companies, they throw spaghetti at the wall, no pun intended, right? They're all like, we're gonna try this, and we hope that it works. However, your approach is not this way, right? You're like, we're gonna be systematic, we're gonna be intentional,
Right,
and we're going to get the results, right?
right.
And this is why people hire you. So let's talk about that mindset. How did you find the strategy that worked? Is
Mhm.
it something that you trial and errored and found? Was it mentorship?
It was, we had to find a way to do it, right? It was just the necessity of the environment at the time. And what I mean by that, not unlike what you've been through in things like COVID or economic downturns, we've all had some sort of leadership lesson on something big changed and we have to reinvent ourselves. And our moment in time was 2003, when the no call list went into effect. And we could see that the outbound call center lead generation was going to fall off, and we had to make the phone ring in. Now, neither Dave nor I knew anything about marketing, but I kept saying, well, we figured this much out. Certainly, we could figure out how to make the phones ring in. And he said to me, Marcia, I have an unlimited budget for marketing that works. So if you'll run tests and show that the marketing works at the right return, we'll buy all of that we can find. And when we have enough programs to where we can get 50 new units a month in a market, we're going to go nationwide with this and grow a big company. And so I like solving puzzles. I like the challenges. And we went to work on doing that. Over time, mainly by trial and error, we developed a really good testing methodology and how to assess the marketing program. And actually, in the book, there is a free download of our marketing opportunity assessment that I use today, whose roots started in 2004 when we were trying to test these things to get into inbound marketing, right? But you said the magic word. Try doesn't work, like throw the spaghetti at the wall. You have to test into it. So at any given moment in time, you probably have 1,000 things in front of you that you could do to create inbound or create a marketing result. But there's 3 to 5 of those that will have the least amount of risk, be a sizable target to go after, that you can get completed in good length of time, um, and have a likelihood of success. And so you want to narrow in on what are my next 3 to 5 opportunities, and then test into no more than 3 at a time. And once you've got one that's a winner, then you start to scale that one and go pick up your next test, right? But you can't go after everything. That's one of the biggest errors see made by businesses and agencies. I started I started Valve and Meter on the premise that the way businesses buy marketing is broken and the way that agencies sell marketing is broken. And we're in the middle of the thick part of why that is. Agencies and businesses try to do a little bit of everything and think a little bit of everything will grow over time, and that is not true. If you test 10 programs, 1 or 2 of those are going to make it. 5 to 9 of those are going to fail, and then what's left is going to be stuff that breaks even but isn't hitting enough to scale yet. You keep testing and improving. But you get overwhelmed with all of the bifurcation of media. 15 years ago when I started this journey in inbound marketing, you ran an ad in the yellow pages and sent out some direct mail. You put a couple billboards up and you knocked on doors, right? And all of those things have split in how consumers take in marketing, that you can't do everything. You got to find the things that work for you.
You know, as an entrepreneur and visionary, right? And I don't know if you have this issue or not, but I'm like, definitely have shiny object syndrome. I'll go to a marketing conference, right? And somebody's doing 5-day challenges and they're like, 5-day challenges, that's where it's at, right? And I'm like, okay. And somebody's saying webinars, that's where it's at. And then there are ads, that's where it's at. And the funnels, that's where it's at. How are you looking at those things and going, yeah, some of those things are going to work if you're all in on that, or keep with the things that are working.
Right. You always want to, anything that's working for you, you want to keep doing that and buy all of that you can that will help you grow. So an example would be, people want to call it SEO, but it's really content marketing supported by SEO, conversion rate optimization, search engine optimization, good strategies to get found on Google, right? And what they'll do, like they'll buy a little bit of this and it works fabulously. I know this because this is my client deck does this. When it's working, you should do more. And getting people to do more of what's working is a very difficult thing to do. They'll say, well, I'm not sure I want to take on the risk of more. And next thing you know, they're buying a billboard or they're buying TV, which you can't track as easily. Do the things that are working for you and start new things through testing, because inevitably the things that are working for you today, they have a shelf life and it might be a decade, but there will be a time when that comes to an end. And if you have not been harvesting new tests and getting other things to work, you get left in the cold. I recently went to a conference in the home services industry, and I could not believe the amount of presenters they had talking about door knocking and presenting that to business owners as this is your next big channel. Now, I want to be clear, door knocking works for a lot of businesses, but it really is important to have the right business owner that is very charismatic and has a ton of energy and does not mind a lot of hiring and attrition. It's a different business model, right? We were door knockers when we started at Defenders, and then we went to outbound telemarketing and did better. Then we went to inbound telemarketing and went better. 10 years, when the company was about 10 years old, we tried to plug door knocking back in. We couldn't do it because we were a different leadership team than what we had had at the beginning.
Hmm.
So testing is the only way that I know. Make wise decisions about what you're going to test, and then have a standard scientific method of how you're going to measure those tests, and then put your chips on the things that are working and start your next test. Cut the things that aren't.
When you're running your tests, how are you? Where are you using a software? Is it the CRM that you're using? How are you measuring these things?
So what we did was we built a data warehouse here at Valve and Meter, and I have data analysts in house, and then we create a feedback loop between the client's CRM and our data warehouse to match the point of lead generation to the revenue that's been created, and to measure the results.
I
Now,
love that.
it's not perfect, so here's where people will go off track. There's a difference between finance math and marketing math. Marketing math is directional. It says looks like it's in this range, which works. Do more of that. Finance math is looking at the actual pennies, counting the pennies, right? It's the rear view mirror look, and it's exact. So you're not ever going to be able to track every lead coming into a business. Even for a campaign, it's difficult to get every lead tracked. But you can get to where you have the best that I've ever done with a team of 30 IT folks trying to work on tracking was about 85%. But it tells me enough to assume it's this number or 15% higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the tracking has to be in place. There's a lot of CRMs out there that are starting to come with some solutions. They're not holistic like I'd like to see. But you got to, even if it's a matter of, shoot, I talk to people that they make 5 sales a year and have a $20 million business, right? And they sell 5 new clients a year. And they're worried about tracking and CRM links and stuff. I'm like, just get a damn spreadsheet, and make a list of the leads and which ones have closed, and we'll be fine.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah, no, 100%.
But start somewhere.
And so and I know you work in the home services field.
Yeah. About half of our business is that. And then we do a lot of manufacturing and industrial services too.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that like? What's marketing like that like? Because that's more B2B, right?
Yeah, we do about half B2B and half B2C. So we do have a lot of home services, but actually we do a lot of location-based search is something we're really strong at here. So if you're a home service company, getting your location matters and how you go to market. If you're an attorney, a dentist's office, a medical practice, those things can matter. We're getting really true advantage for our clients there. When you get into B2B, you're looking to create more relationships for them to talk to and harvest, because they might not close their deal for 2 years, 12 months. There's a longer sales cycle, but a much bigger ticket usually.
Right.
So it's a different type of marketing. You're working a lot with messaging and value proposition and branding. You're managing the conversation across timelines at different stages of pipeline. And you talk about the biggest miss that's needed. Sales leadership they have to be closely aligned with marketing. So I see sales leadership as my client. And in this world, they actually are. But even if I'm embedded on a team, if I'm creating leads, that guy who's responsible to close those leads, he's my client. I'm his client because he has to get a good close rate and a good revenue per opportunity in order to fund the marketing. And if we're to do more marketing, he needs to exceed the financial model goals, right? So that relationship becomes very, very important to the success of any program. So I would say that the differences are the local focus is very digital. You have a lot of opportunities in home services with brand at a certain point for sure. But in B2B, you have to watch messaging, relationships, and the continual communication with your target audience.
Yet, how many, how much money do you think is being wasted, marketing dollars, by not having a proper sales like funnel and follow up sequence, you know what I mean, like
Right.
in place?
We have a team here. We have our own call center here at Valve and Meters. So in B2B assignments, we actually will do account based marketing or outreach marketing to set appointments for salespeople. If owners of businesses really took a look under the hood, they would probably vomit on what happens there. I have my most successful clients, their sales leadership they take responsibility for the results. They own it. In most organizations, that doesn't happen. And so you'll see finger pointing at lead quality a lot. But the truth of it is, if you ask my team out here who's setting these meetings, they'll tell you you can't reschedule the meeting that we got for you. You can't cancel the meeting that we got for you. You can't not follow up with the meeting we got. I mean, they're calling us back saying, I haven't heard from George. I like their product, but he kind of seems to have fallen off the earth. That
It's mind blowing.
makes me cry.
Well, it sucks because like sometimes I'll talk to clients and I'm like, hold on, we'll talk about marketing, but what is your sales intake?
Right,
Like, how much money are you leaving on the table right now?
right,
Just not having a good sales process. And if you're the CEO, right, and you're the one having to do sales, which most of the time it is, right, but then you're also worried about client meetings, and then you have to work on the deliverables, and then you're the technician in the business, and then you're doing employee meetings, and then you're doing processes and procedures. Like, how much time are you actually spending in that sales seat,
right,
which needs to be a 40-hour a week job?
right. If you call me and say, I'm this business owner, the CEO, and I do all the selling, I'm going to tell you I'm not for you. There's some things you need to work on first. You have to get that function of sales outside of yourself and delegated, not delegated, but you have to grow somebody into that, right? You're not ready to invest in marketing yet.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad you do that for people because I really do. Everybody's like, I've got to get leads in, and I've got to get leads in, and
Right,
then it's like, all right, well, we're getting you leads in, you can't close,
right.
so what's the
I
problem?
once had a deal that we had sold, and in the meantime, between the time we sold it and when the work started, they changed sales leaders. And the new guy did not know the industry or the business yet, and he's trying to run the program we're sending leads over for. So they had a team of about 25 salespeople we were testing in one region, narrowed it down to about seven people that you would distribute the leads to. They gave 79 of the first 125 leads went to one salesperson who made one meeting. He either missed them, rescheduled them, or canceled them, and they were all pre-qualified meetings. So there was that. So the sales leaders on my back saying, "You're sending us crap leads. This isn't working." And I said, "Well, you've got this guy over here who got five leads. I know he's brand new to the team and he's right out of college, but he got five leads and three of those have closed. So it seems to me like when you're looking at a test, you have to look at it this way. This part of it's working, this part's not. In that example, the part of giving leads to the 79 and zero guy, that's not working. So you got to cut that out. And so I told my team, geographically focus on the area around this salesperson and see what happens. And we unlocked a working campaign that way.
Yeah, I mean that's key. How are you? Do you have like sales companies that you work with that you can like refer business to if somebody's like doesn't have a really robust sales
Right. Definitely, there's
system?
opportunities there. Here in Central Indiana, I have a pretty good network of the players there. Honestly, the concerning part, Armando, is if I ask about it of the business owner, I will. What is told to me is they already have it in place, and so now we're at the spot of I don't think it's a training issue. I think it's a process issue and a management issue. If you go back to Michael Gerber's book, the E Myth, great book. It's a little old, but boy, the principles still apply.
Yeah.
And in the E-Myth, he talks about if you're a VP level, your job is to develop the systemic processes of the business. How do business units work with each other? If you're at the director level, you are working on improving or designing systems. If you're at the manager level, it's your job to make sure the systems are used. And if you're on the front line, you use the systems correctly, right? So if you have those layers in there, you've got to keep people. If you're gonna hire any consultant, if you're gonna hire me or you or anybody that's coming in to put a process in place, follow the frickin' process before you start going off track would be the first thing. But keeping people on the core process is often the first thing that's needed and not additional training.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah to that, for sure. It's, we finally found a number two that we're bringing in, because the guy that we have, and he's currently still here, is just he's a creative guy,
Right.
right?
Right.
He's a creative guy. Knows how to shoot from the hip. Improv is his deal, right? Process and procedures are not,
Mhm.
right? And so here I am for 4 years, right? Trying to, because I love the guy, right? He's my best friend, right? And I'm trying to oh boy, I've wanted him to step into this role, and he wants to help too, right? So there's that, there's that level, and I'm like, and it got to a point where I'm all like, am I an idiot? Like, what am I doing here?
Mhm.
Like, find me a player that loves that understands procedures and processes and is going to do that, and then keep Will in the spot of creative. He's the creative director. He's going to write the scripts. He's going to be front facing with the client once they become clients. So let's put somebody in charge that has the processes and procedures,
Right.
mindset, and that's how you're going to grow.
The most successful sales consulting groups in the country are not that because they have great speakers and great training. They are that because they have a great process. My friend Tom Searcy with Hunt Big Sales, which is a great sales advisory company for folks that are working in that B2B space, especially. He says sales is 5% talent and 95% process. But when you put the process in place, you have to keep following it.
How do you get someone to follow the procedure
Right.
without, you have to micromanage it at first, right? But
Um,
how do you keep them doing it?
yes and no. I'll take my Defender's experience in training people to sell a security system over the phone as an example. You have a solid sales training process. So you're putting them through the process conducted by great trainers to have them sit in a seat and take calls and follow a process that's supported by the technology in front of them and the coaching around them. That process was getting 200,000 completed sales a year. It wasn't like, oh, we only had 25 examples a month to get this right. No, we know in the data what works best. Now, there will be outliers. There are some things in selling I can say that won't work for you. There are things you can say that won't work for me, right? They usually have the words balls or tits in them, but that's another podcast, right? Sorry about my language.
I love it. Go ahead.
but but yeah, we had it. The process is so valuable. People put all this emphasis on, I need the right marketing, I need the right salespeople, I need the right staff, I need the right product, I need the right offers, I need the right brand. You fucking need a process. Process reigns the day. And if you're looking at building and selling your business and you don't have written, proven processes, you're going to take a hit in the value of your business. Or maybe I should rephrase it another way. There is no premium valuation of a business that's flying by the seat of its pants. Yeah.
100%. So
My friend just sold a multi-$100 million business and did very, very well with it. Average the average multiple for her industry would have put her at about a 6. but she had such great process and all the way through the business proven out, that took her up to, most of the offers she got were above 12. And as a result of the process and the focus on culture, the culture took her to a 1775. So I'm not just telling you get process down for today's results. I'm telling you, if you want to create wealth and abundance and generational wealth and all kinds of opportunities for folks near you, you write down some things that need to be done.
Let me ask you this. When you are approaching processes and procedures, right? And you're in that like $0 to $1 million range
Right.
in revenue. A lot of people are going to say, hey, don't worry about process right now. Focus on sales and marketing, right? How do you balance that, right? Because you got to work processes and procedures, right? To make sure that the deliverables are and the expectations are the same, right? But then you have to obviously, focus on sales and marketing because you have to grow the business with top line revenue.
Right.
So how are you managing that?
So all of that is processes. So it's not like your operations part has process and sales is sales and marketing is marketing. Sales is following a system. It might not be a system that works, but it might be a system that's different from one person to the next, which is not good. Because then how do you know what you're looking for when you hire too? But all of that is a process. So as a leader in business, if you have any hope of being promoted or growing your business to the next level, this is what keeps so many small business owners in that $0 to $1 million in revenue, or maybe two. What is it? 5% breakthrough $1 million and 1% breakthrough 5 million. It's
Yeah,
atrocious. It is the
very small.
inability to look at what you are doing, even if it's gut, and saying, well, what? Because even if it's gut, you, Armando, are using a process. And then observing yourself in that and saying, what's my checklist of the 5 things that I do when I start a podcast interview, when I exit a podcast interview, when I prep a guest for a podcast interview, when I'm thinking about who's going to be a guest? What are for each of those, what's the simple? I have one right here. This is how I start a strategy discovery. It's a little simple checklist with 5 steps on it. That's my process. Now, someone else on my team will take that someday and write it out into a full-blown page-long document that if they just use the checklist would be fine. And some of the best business processes are just checklists, right? So now, yesterday, I'm in one of these calls, and my VP of sales is all over the place on this piece, and I can do the same thing if I don't have that checklist in front of me. I just slid the checklist over to him. Now he owns the checklist, right? Now he can train his direct reports to use that little checklist. Now I am free now to go find the next deal, create some more marketing, create a new network, because I'm not having to be in that meeting doing these 5 things, right? If you look at,
Yeah.
you're a successful guy, you've done amazing things in your career. Everything you're doing is a process. Even the way that you show up at, you and I are in some of the same business owner development education programs. Even the way that you show up, I don't spend a ton of time with you. I've been with you in person 3 times, I think, and on video conference a few dozen times. You have a process you're following, just even in your gut, of how you develop a relationship, how you handle a conversation. When you write it
Yeah.
down, now you're able to delegate it. And every time you delegate that process to someone else who can duplicate it, you've just lifted yourself up. Guess what
I,
else? You just lifted
yeah.
them up.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that concept. I'll tell you where I get caught up, right? Is in the it is in the making the decision, right? Because like to be messy and to like explain what it is that I do in this like way, like it's a lot of it is instinct, right? Like a lot of it is just, it comes from that place, like to your point, right? How do you take this amorphous blob of instinct and procedurize it.
Right. Some of the best work I've done in that area has been because I was doing the job, and figured out the best way that it worked, and then handed it off to somebody else. That's some of my. That's probably the. If I looked at the hundreds and hundreds of things that I've ended up developing a process for, that's probably been a big one. It's harder for me to sit outside of the doing of a job and say, this is what your process. I'm not a process engineer, right? But
Right.
there are people who either have the ability to do that or professionals you can hire. And I've worked with those too, where they come in, you download your process of everything you're doing, and they help you put together the best process and get it written, right? Which is a very valuable exercise. But until you start somewhere at creating a small habit, it's hard to get a big habit correct.
True.
Now, writing process is not the biggest challenge for you. Your challenge is that you are a visionary thinker, and so you have a lot of ideas and they come really rapid. But I have a process for managing guys like you because I worked with one for 14 years. And it's called the idea hopper, and it's a staged process of how your ideas get caught, written down, and migrated through, analyzing whether they are worthy of a test, what kind of test should be done, where are they at in the test stages, is the test working or not, does it need to be repeated and scaled, right? And it's like a one-page map of how to manage your idea flow.
Where is this? Where can I get this?
Actually, I did a presentation on it probably before we met in the Visionary Forum. I'll send you the deck that has that in there. But
Please.
you need somebody writing really close to you that's really good at catching the stuff and saying, because you're going to throw out 10 ideas, and I hate to be the one to tell you if nobody's ever said it. 9 of those are bullshit, but man, there's one of those that's gold all day long. And that's all you need because you're going to
Yeah.
have 10 ideas every day, if not more frequently. And so
Probably an
then we
hour.
want to harvest the ones that are the most likely to work in the least amount of time with the least amount of risk and a sizable opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And I would say I was that for Dave. It actually was a little bit flipped between us. He had grown up in this process environment in manufacturing, and he really had studied Michael Gerber and the E Myth, and he had gone out and helped locksmiths grow multiple locations and scale their businesses right out of college, right? So he was a process guy, but he also was one of these idea guys like you, and he would spin those things out so fast we were all just always in the whirlwind, right? And so I had to find ways to organize what was coming at me to be able to process it correctly. But he taught me how to write good processes and the importance of it. And then ultimately, that's the way I ended up leading. And that part I was probably better than him at. But I would have never, ever understood it without him.
That's incredible. So where are you putting these ideas?
So I call it the idea hopper. Um,
Okay.
so it's a list of all these ideas. And sometimes it's just, and I actually think folks that have this gift that you do, it's important for you to get them out of your head and onto paper. Write them down, make lists of them. Sometimes you have a business challenge, you're going to brainstorm that. You might have 50 things you could do. When you look at the list that 40 of them aren't viable, but then have that person who's able to do the analysis of which ones are going to yield. Because you can analyze an idea to predict outcomes. That's what the whole marketing opportunity assessment I spoke of earlier does. Do the pre work on the math. You might have, out of your 50 ideas, you might have 3 or 4 that look viable. And now you start to run the numbers on the impact that they'll make, and you see which one emerges as your biggest opportunity. Having people around you who can help with that, and you submitting to that discipline of not demanding that all of your stuff gets done, but that as a cohort you come up with what can we agree needs to be done, and then follow a good process with that. I think you would find that would be life changing.
Yeah, we're starting to so we're working with John Glon. He's our
Mm-hmm.
Bloom Growth
Right.
integrator or implementer. I always get those mixed up.
Right.
Anyway, he's coming in helping us with that EOS system stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What my problem is I will throw my ideas into the issues, and that's not where they belong. They belong somewhere else.
Right.
So where are you putting those ideas? You talking about the idea hopper? What is that? Like a
Right.
Google
So,
spreadsheet?
yeah, I might not be the best person to answer the question you're asking because
Okay.
I'm not a CEO or visionary that is coming up with 50 new things a day, right? That's not me. My integrator does not understand how good he has it that I'm not that way. Because it is, for some integrators, that can be heavy. For a good integrator, it's a very natural thing to be able to do. Before it was cool, I was an integrator to my CEO, right? But what I am good at is listening to other people's ideas, going out and experiencing other people's thoughts, like with you, um, and coming back to my team and saying, this is something I think we should check out. And then that would go into the idea hopper, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you're badass.
Well, the funny thing was about our owner, Dave, I love that guy, but he could spit out 10 things at you that you needed to do and maybe it was even course correction and might be angry about it. And I learned over time, he doesn't pay me to get the 10 things done, A week, 2 days later, he's going to forget all about being angry about this. And so I take the 10 things and I go, which one of these is the most likely to work in the least amount of time with the least amount of risk? And then a couple weeks later, I go back and I'll say, hey, remember that discussion we had, maybe an argument about these 10 things? Well, I wouldn't say 10 things. I've been thinking you're absolutely right about this. And I would pull out the one and say, and here's my plan to go after it. He would not be hurt over, and usually didn't even remember it, that there were 10 things. The other 9 didn't matter. It was the fact I came back and said, I think this is a worthy idea. Here's the plan to go test it. And the other thing I did for him was if that idea didn't work, I didn't always come back and say, well, there's another one that didn't work, right? Because he had winners enough that I could just talk to him, because you do need to. This is something that doesn't get talked about. Here's something new we need to think about. When you're on a leadership team, especially, but even in a business, it is important. And I'm not saying this just because I am the CEO, but we do need to protect the confidence of our CEO. Walking around muttering things like all this idea shit that Armando keeps throwing at me, that isn't going to do anybody any good, right? Going back to Dave every time an idea doesn't pass through testing and saying, well, you got another loser, it doesn't do any good, right? It doesn't, because I want him to have
Right.
more good ideas. You know,
Yeah.
I can go off to my quiet space and go, hey, had a stupid idea. But,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
protect the
Agreed.
confidence of the CEO.
That's sound advice. And don't allow the fact that some of the ideas failed, to bring you down and to stop you from
Right.
coming up with those more ideas.
Right. We had a moment in time where an idea or a marketing test failed that we really, really wanted to work, and it failed. And a year later, we're testing in a different product line, and we get a win with that same marketing program. And that win allowed us to buy a national purchase of marketing from that company. And a couple weeks later, I don't even know why it took me that long. I was just learning my way on the inbound marketing, but neither Dave or I recalled it. But I went and checked what I had paid for that marketing program the first time, and the price was 2.5 times more than what we were paying for the national buy. So I went back to the vendor and said, can I include this other product we sell on that same rate? And they said yes. And that made that program work. So failed tests, failure doesn't matter. Here's the thing. When you're testing correctly, things are going to fail. 90% of the things we try are going to fail. You got to separate yourself from the failure of a test and you as a failure as a business leader. They are two completely different things. You're more likely to fail as a business leader if you don't try things, if you don't, not try, if you don't test things and follow that process, right? The failed tests are not failed you. And so many people get all this fear in there that that they're going to get fired because something failed. Most of the working marketing programs, either for our clients today or in my history, came out of some sort of a failure along the way that we figured out how to improve it to make it work.
It is having the patience to also see something through, right? Like,
Yeah.
at what point do you bail?
Right.
When's the point where you're just like, all right, guys, it's not working. Let's get out of here.
Right. Now
What
that I
point is
have
that?
to watch myself for, because I often will stay in things longer than I should.
Is that gut?
I have in the different personality behavioral assessments, I have a tendency to try to get more out of the things that are right in front of me. And so I sometimes will tweak something that's not quite working yet. I'll spend a lot of time trying to change the little things. And often I just have to walk away. So, again, that's not the normal behavior of what you would typically think of as a visionary CEO business owner.
Yeah.
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 Now,
Well, Marcia, how do people find you?
if I ever find myself, we'll know. But, if your listeners would like a free copy of my book, all they need to do is just send me their address, and I'll be glad to send them a copy of Here We Grow. This has a lot of the principles that you and I have been talking about in it today. You can do that by going to our website. We are valveandmeter.com. I'm so old. I'm saying www.valveandmeter.com. Yeah.
Nice. I love it. Marcia, you're badass. I'm really glad that I know you. And let's have some more conversations.
I'm happy to call you my friend, buddy.
It's really great. Thank you. And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment for your video production needs, social media, organic, VSLs. We got you. And you can watch Spaghetti on the Wall anywhere. You're probably listening to it right now. So keep listening, keep watching, and we'll see y'all next week.